It's also like, to bring back the chess analogy, is if you looked at war and you ignored the human casualties and the horrors and the fact that it should absolutely be avoided at all costs, and all human deaths are valuable, and bombing apartment buildings and all the horrible shit, it's terrible and evil. But this isn't like that we are being fed a narrative that Russia made a big move and there was no other moves.
Right.
And when we find out about the moving of weapons closer to Russia, the discussion of them joining NATO, and you realize Russia is getting moved on. There's moves. Now, you absolutely be correct in saying the correct response is not blowing up apartment buildings and starting a war and invading a country. You're right. But this is not an unprovoked situation.
It didn't just come out of nowhere from a madman.
And we're not getting this narrative on television. This is a new time. And the only way to get this discussion is you guys. It's people like you. And that's what's so fucking important about today. And that's what's so dangerous about censorship. And that's what's so dangerous about these partisan ideas where you're willing to absolutely ignore good points that the other side says, because then you would give them some sort of credit in winning this ideological bullshit game we're all playing.
That is so well said.
It drives me nuts, especially on corruption. You know, you were talking about censorship, but corruption is a great one where everybody wants to talk about Hunter Biden on the right. I would listen, we can talk about Hunter Biden all day. We've been covering
We've covered Hunter Biden extensively.
He's a guy who got hooked on drugs.
Right.
Yes.
Okay?
And likes to get his dick sucked.
Yeah, and who doesn't?
Right.
That's not what the problem is. Yeah. You know, it's just revealing a very corrupt system that everyone wants to ignore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we were like,
had,
hey, let's talk about Jared Kushner. And then a lot of people on the right are saying, I'm like, hey, this guy, it's actually great. There are internal Saudi documents where he asked the Saudi Royal Kingdom Fund or whatever for $1 billion investment in his new fund, private equity fund, right after he leaves the White House. The internal emails are like, I don't think this guy's a very good investor. I'm not sure this would be a good use of our capital. And MBS, the Crown Prince, is like, give him the money. They're like, he intervened send him the $1 billion
personally to
just to give this guy
his $2 billion. I think it was maybe $2 billion. $2 billion for his fund.
Yeah.
That's a baller friend to have.
Yeah, but if you're on the right, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about Hunter Biden and his laptop, and of course the Democrats. We had Ted Lieu, congressman, on. This is back in the old days at the Hill at Rising, but I'll never forget. We were pressing him on Hunter Biden and these boards that he was on and the money he was getting, whatever. He's like, people sit on boards and they get paid money. Like, it was so part of the Washington, like the water that they swim in. He couldn't even conceive that it was a problem. I mean, now it may not be illegal, but that's an issue in and of itself. The fact that he could just hand wave away.
Well, it's semi-legal.
Yes. Oh, no, it's just straight legal.
Yeah,
that's
but
that's the crazy part.
It's sketchy.
It's legal, but it's sketchy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to your point about, censorship and the total lack of willingness to challenge your own side's narrative, did you just see this Columbia Journalism Review report that came out about Russiagate? Saagar and I were looking at it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's really long, in-depth. I mean, it's overdue, right? It's way after the fact. But I think this is one of the first, certainly mainstream, and CJR is as mainstream as they come, mainstream attempts to actually go back through the Russiagate narrative, where it started, how it was sold to the American people, and all of the lies and especially the omissions. And they take a really hard look at the New York Times as kind of the main player in the story. There were other villains as well, but the New York Times was the main player. And they would report something that, they would shade it to look as bad as possible with regards to Trump-Russia connections. They would get some other piece of information that was exculpatory, wouldn't be in the paper at all. And they got all kinds of, millions of new subscribers to their paper who were there to hear this, elaborate tale of Russian conspiracy and the Manchurian candidate and whatever. And the underlying narrative that at least I take away from the CJR report is the New York Times and MSNBC and a lot of other places. They were more interested in feeding that audience what they wanted to hear than actually looking at the facts of what was happening. And you read it, it is as damning as it could be. And listen, the way we were sold the Iraq War was bad enough. That was a travesty. After the fact, they actually did some correctives that here's what we got wrong and we're sorry, whatever. This, they will never admit that they did anything wrong here. They just move forward and pretend like none of it ever happened. And it is astonishing. And then they turn around and wonder, like, why does no one trust us? We just don't get it.
Yeah.